Hey guys, it's Dave Jacobson, and this is a quick overview of the preferences in QMaster. So if you go over here to the Preferences tab, you'll see a number of things that you can adjust. When you start working with QMaster, it's going to need to generate a settings file to store all of these output settings that you create for each of the color labels. So by default, it wants to place those into your user folder. So just know that if you have multiple users on the computer, you will be the only person that can see those settings. If you want to share those settings, you can either put it into the shared folder, which is also in the users folder, or you can define a custom file. This one's particularly great because you can put that file on your network if you want to and share it with multiple After Effects users in your department. Everybody can look at the same settings file and know that they're producing consistent renders. I recommend if you're doing that, you should use the read-only mode so that people don't accidentally change the file when they don't mean to. So you'd want to turn this option on. If they do change any of the settings while this option's on, those settings will only last for that session and it won't affect any of the other users. Also, if you click on this question mark, it'll actually give you a file path for whatever settings file you have selected in here. So in this case, it's the one that's in my user folder. And I can see it by highlighting that path and going to copy, and then I can actually go and paste that into my Finder like so, and there's the file right there. So that's going to get created as soon as you launch QMaster for the first time. I can tell it I want to use a custom file. If I do that, I've already got a path in here that I was using earlier, but you can click on this little button and it's going to ask you, do you want to choose an existing settings file? So if you're linking to one that's on your network or you're going to use one that somebody's giving you, then you would hit yes, and you would tell it where you want to do that. In this case, I have one on my desktop, so I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to load that. And as soon as I do that, you'll notice I got a lot more presets in here that I didn't have before. So that's great. Or I can just go back to the one in my user folder, and then it's going to immediately load that. And you probably noticed that when it's set to custom, there's a file path right here, so you can also paste it in there if you want to. Next, you've got the option to purge the cache when you prep the queue. So all that means is when you push this button, or you push this one over here, because they're exactly the same thing, it's basically telling After Effects to go and run this command right here. It's going to purge the image cache memory. So that's like, you know, your RAM previews, any kind of images that are being stored in your RAM, and those add up. So those can take up a lot of memory. It's a good idea to purge the cache before you render. I find it makes rendering more stable, especially when it comes to using multiple output modules like this. Or for example, if I drag this in here and I add a image sequence setting to that and I hit prep queue, I've got 3 output modules. I find it's generally pretty stable when you're doing image sequences. It gets a little bit less stable when you're doing multiple QuickTimes, especially ProRes. So just keep that in mind. It's a good idea to have this option enabled so that the renders are a little bit more stable. Down here we have sync OM version numbers. And what this means is it's going to keep all the version numbers in sync for all these output modules. There's a number of reasons why the versions might go out of sync, and so that option is protection against that. One example is if, let's say I have an image sequence that I'm rendering out, and let's say I've rendered 5 versions of it already. And then let's say I decide to add an audio file to the second output module with versioning enabled as well. Next time I hit render, my image sequence is going to be on a V6. However, my audio, since it's new, is going to be on a V1. I don't want to have a V1 and a V6 because that's going to cause confusion. So that option is going to make sure that the audio starts on a V6. Next, you've got Enable Quick Labels. This will be on by default, and it's referring to this section right here, these quick labels, as well as this little bit right here. If you find these are not useful for your workflow, you can just turn it off. So I can disable that, and now it'll no longer be visible in the interface. So this helps make it a smaller footprint if that's what you want to do. I usually leave it on though. Show help tips. This will also be enabled the first time you run QMaster. So you'll notice now when I mouse over, it's giving me pretty detailed descriptions of all the buttons and drop downs and things like that. So this is intended to help you out as you're starting to learn QMaster and understand the workflow of it. After a while though, they'll just get in your way, so you're going to want to turn them off. And then last but not least, I've got reset label names. And this is just referring to these. So you'll notice I've got all these names that I put in here. They used to be colors. When you first install QMaster, these are all going to be colors. So if I decided I wanted to go back, I can do that. I can just hit reset label names. And it's asking me, am I sure I want to do this? Yes, I am. And now these are back to the default colors. It also erases the quick label buttons. So these are blank. It does not, however, clear out the actual output settings for each of the templates. It only erases and resets the names. So you'll see all my settings are still here. That's it. That covers the preferences for QMaster. Thanks for watching. Hope this was helpful.